Video games are the biggest entertainment industry in the world. How did we get here? Why did we get here? We've turned art into the worship of Mammon. Why doesn't God send a flood like the last time? Well, let me tell you, here is the entire history of video games. Or close enough. Let's begin with the origin of games. This is the game of Ur. It was probably played by the founder of the oldest video game company, EA Nasir, who traded unfinished copper and would release the same copper every year. Between 2000 BC and the 1900s, many other games were created, but at the turn of the century, a Yank bought bubblegum from this vending machine, and he got an idea. What if we use this technology for games? You pay a small transaction fee, no, smaller, a microtransaction, and you get to play a game. That will never work. We'll put porn in the back. We're gonna be rich! Thus the penny arcade was born. For only a penny you could watch play game. One hit game was Baffle Ball. And then these a-holes were like, this is gambling, you're gonna call us gambler-phobic, but we're gonna nip this in the bud before it can lead to Forspoken. They forced the makers to add flippers, making it skill-based, and thus creating casual gaming. Washington's gambler phobia claimed another victim though. An American company called Service Games gave up on the US and focused on Japanese gamblers. One gambler lost all his money. He didn't know English, but he still wanted to curse the company, so he shouted the first two letters in each word. We'll get back to these guys, but no, they made Periscope. That cost $0.25 to play, and that set the standard price for US arcades. These arcade machines were getting more advanced and more electric every day. On the other side, the first digital game was created by Alan Turing. A German would send a message, and then you could use this thing to practice your German. After that, the Brits kept making games. Cross that, they kept making one game, Noughts and Crosses. Then one of these flashy Yanks invented graphics with tennis for two. People saw this and just stopped caring about gameplay and story. MIT, 1962. They had something called a computer monitor. Steve Russell spent 200 hours making the first computer game, Space War. There immediately was a modding scene, because not even the first game was feature complete. They also invented the first game controller because ew, keyboard controls. Same decade, New Hampshire. Ralph Baer told his bosses, I want to move stuff on the TV. And they told him, we're about to become the Lockheed Corporation? Does it at least blow up the TV? Maybe. So they let him finish, but they couldn't sell it, so they sold the license to Magnavox. Generation 1. The first console, closed-circuit electronic playground. What are you guys doing? You draw, well, yeah. The Odyssey. But what exactly is it? There's a dot, it move, two more dot, you move. Haven't seen anyone beat Dark Souls with this controller yet. For graphics, you put up a plastic overlay on your TV. Ralph thought it would sell for $19, they sold it for $100. Video game industry. There's a misconception that we find this dumb today, but back then they must have been blown away. No, they weren't. And people are gonna say the same thing about Google Glass. So let's talk about a man who did impress. There was once a tall Mormon. In university he played Space War. I'm gonna remake this. His name was Nolan Bushwell, and he's the father of shitty remakes. Which is what the video game industry is, so he's the father of video games. His company teamed up with Nothing Associates to manufacture it. Get ready now. It was unfortunately dead on arrival, an economic strain on Nothing Associates. I made the video so I could say this. Nolan bid farewell to Nothing Associates. And the second he had exited the building, he had a moment of post-nut clarity. Dum 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 bum. He founded Atari, and their first ever Pong machine stopped working because the coin holder overflowed. Magnavox sued immediately. They hired the hippie who made Cars 2, who stole a fat bonus. They invented the console, Home Pong. It was a hit. but they destroyed TVs, and those were expensive back in the day, so video games were already ruining lives. Then the Space Jam guys bought Atari and threw Noland out. A habit of theirs. He headed to a bar and saw sleazy guys playing this Japanese hit that cost a 100 yen shortage in Japan. Kids would like this, he thought, but they have no place to play games. So he started Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and the kids who went there turned into teens, creating the golden age of arcade games. Atari was making some serious cash with Asteroids, pretentious indie title Where's My AAA Blockbusters, with Namco, and a game called Rally X. But while the executives were gushing over that, Toru Iwatani, a former ghost hunter and competitive fruit eater, wanted to bring his experience to the digital screen. Now, if you think a game about a pizza eating ghosts won't be the face of video games, you are dumb. Pac-Man exploded, there was a hit song, he was named Man of the Year by Mad Magazine, and Iwatani, for making the entire industry mainstream, he received a small bonus. Ka-ching! Arcades were popping up everywhere. We need to talk about the 80s. The 1880s. 10 years earlier, The Last Samurai, Tom Cruise, died. Since he was in Rain Man, a company started making playing cards to honor him. Then toys, like the Ultra Hand, the Light Gun, and most importantly, the Elekonga. You see, they had hired a man named Shigeru Miyamoto, and when he saw the drum, he said, I have an idea for a video game. I call it Donkey Konga 3, All You Can Eat, Spring 50 Music Work Mix. Can you simplify it? Donkey Kong. And then there's Miss Pac-Man, Frogger, Star Wars Arcade, Q*bert, and that's it, that's all the arcade game. Gen 2, the second generation of consoles. There are others, let's speedrun them. Fairchild, neat. Odyssey 2, is that a keyboard? Not a console. ColecoVision, it's about the graphics. In television, B-17 Baumer. It's 77. Atari announces the VCS, or the 2600. 9 games available, and it will cost £1,400. What the? It wasn't an instant smash hit. The developers wanted to abandon it, but Warner did not. They believed in this, New plan? What's gaming all about? They remade Space Invaders and things exploded. Atari became the fastest growing company in US history. Their boss was very hated. A couple of coders decided to start their own company. Oh, hate begets hate. The successes just kept on coming. In 1982, video games were the shit. Atari was dominating. It even had adult games that an American company made, then pretended to have imported from Sweden. You guys, actually suck. Let's go to Japan. A Nintendo guy named Gunpei saw someone playing with his calculator, so he had an idea. That idea was not the PlayStation Vita. It actually outsold the Vita 20-1 or something. Back in the States, Atari Pac-Man would sell 8 million copies. It sucked. Atari released a brand new console. It sucked. Worst controller ever. Warner wasn't worried. They just signed a 2-picture deal with Steven Spielberg that included a game version of his blockbuster E.T., and the executive promised it would be out in 6 months. E.T. is a game about falling into holes. It sold millions of copies, but they had printed billions of copies, had to bury them in the Nevada desert, and with that, the entire American industry crashed. Deservedly. Was it only because of E.T.? Yes, and a little bit of too much low quality and competition from Commodore 64. I won't cover PC gaming. Gen 3. Third generation 8-bit games. The gaming industry is in ruins. Many developers have resorted to cannibalism and living in tribes. But on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, something is happening. Nintendo launches the family computer. No, I ain't covering PC gaming. Anyone else here? Remember Sega? After watching Only Live Twice, they decided to become Japanese. And after the Famicom sold gazillions, they decided to start spamming out consoles. Until they got a good one. Sega Master System. It was a huge hit in one specific country. Are you ready? I'm about to mention it. Sweden. See? There we are. Other v Europe. That's us. Also, Brasil! Mestre! Sistema! Maybe that's why I've never heard of any of these games. Principe da Persia, Estrella de Fantasia. Those are some ugly covers. What's Atari up to besides being completely broke? We are making a new console. It's gonna be cheap, it's gonna be faster, it's gonna have better graphics. Sounds good? No, it will not sound good. It will sound like 70s electronics. Okay then. I'm cancelling it. Consoles are dead, we're becoming a compute company. But we are completely broke. Fine. If a Japanese company shows up out of nowhere and resurrects the entire market, I'll release it. So everyone, are you ready? Here it comes. It's time to talk about Dendy. Come, play some Sumari. Wait, that's the mascot for Famicom. Huge success in Japan. Let's have someone sell it in America. So they reached out to Atari. Hi, would you like free money and no risks? This seems like the right thing to do. But we are Atari. 2 years passed, and by this point Nintendo had sold so many Famicoms that they were rich enough to launch it in America themselves. But no Yank wants to buy a video game console. So what if we sell them an entertainment system? And with a seal of approval, we will be the shogun of video games. If a developer tries to launch a low-quality game on our console, well, you've seen the show, you know what happens. They dropped it in New York and included a game-playing robot who is holding his hands like he's walking here, and that caused the Nintendo Entertainment System to be a mid-sized hit, like just enough to stay in the race. But a small game would soon change that.
Excite bike!
Excite mother! Also, I'm gonna make a game where the screen moves. Oh wow, we can sell that. You play as a flower-eating Italian plumber and you fight a dragon. The screen moves though. They bundle it with the NES. I have a new game idea. It will be a game with a save function. Awesome, I love it. What's the Nintendo policy on Twinks? Save function. Good music on these games. Hearing Nintendo's stance on Twinks, the companies Square and Enix were founded to assist in that market. Nintendo was king and became a household name. But what about outside of the household? To talk about that, let's head to the USSR. A guy made a block game. Another guy saw the block game. This turned into one of those ensemble racing films of people wanting the rights. But back at the starting area, the handheld rights had not been taken. Joink! This would be a perfect game for Nintendo's new Game Boy. The Game Boy was a handheld console that is so much better than the PlayStation Vita. Oh yeah, this lady is gonna compete with Wario. Get out of here, Sony. Go add Morbius to Concord. Generation 4. In Sakeland, Sega got their hands on a new chip. They were making a monster. Mega Drive. 16-bit system. 10 times the color. But how to bring this to America? You already know what they did. Hi, Atari. Guys, what is this? Stop it. Launched it themselves and named it Genesis to distance themselves from the satanic panic. But afraid the name would scare off the godless, they bundled it with a furry game. The Genesis is cool. They had MJ supporting. But we need jocks. Remember that company from 3,750 years ago? Sega went to them and said, hey, stop selling copper. Never. Make sports games. Deal. So it was the console to play sports games, making them a lock-in for these losers. Jocks and cool kids. There was one mark they were missing. Weird kids. We need a mascot to appeal to just the weirdest little dudes, like damn. No we don't. But how about that guy? Okay, we'll try, but you're wrong. He was obviously right. Sonic is the Genesis. I sure hope him being right won't cause infighting between Sega Japan and Sega the West that's still going on till this day for some reason. This was great. Sega Mega Drive dominated and outsold its competitor every single year. Wait, you haven't made a CD player? What are you waiting for? Nintendo to make one? For $300 in '92, instead of text blocks, we get can we go back to text blocks? One game made it to Congress. You play as police, watching some kids trespass into a house filled with vampires. This was so violent. The US government decided to establish a rating system for video games. We're Sega, we'll make one more gimmick to keep gamers before the next console. How long before the next console? 11 hours. What's with these expensive gimmicks? Weren't they dominating? In Japan, Nintendo was dominating. No Japanese guy was ever going to touch this. But now, they finally got their first new console after many years. Shh! The Super Famicom. It was absolute pandemonium, chaos in the streets, by Japanese standards. Then they launched it in the US. Now, the Super Nintendo had 15 games, was expensiver versus Sega that had 150 games. But Mario World is better than every single one of them, so it was time for a console war. Man, it was so head to head. Nintendo would release Link to the Past, it was groundbreaking, and Sega would counter with a dolphin. It was Dolphin. Except when it's not. The Genesis had a slightly better processor, and Nintendo had a slightly better everything else. But what about the games? I asked the only guy I know who owns a Mega Drive what his favorite game is on the system, and he said, I don't know. Then he mentioned 2 games he had not played. I actually own Strider on the PlayStation 1. It got music. So, okay, I might sound biased, but the games, man, the games! Super Metroid, Chrono Trigger, Donkey Kong Country. Eventually, the SNES outsold the Genesis. But finally, which was the better console? Philips CDI. It had 3 Zelda games instead of 1. Gen 5 starts with the 3DO. In 1993, the founder of EA Games was launching his very own console, while Nintendo and Sega acted like the 5 families to their third-party developers. The 3DO would be their chill bro. You don't have to pay anything to be on our console, we'll just hang. But without licensing fees, how would the console turn a profit? The founder of EA Games was launching his very own console. They were gonna sell it for $700 in '93. And by the way, Tywin acted like he did for a reason. The third-party developers laughed and mocked the 3DO behind its back, releasing all the shovelware. But it was the most high-tech console at the time, and it kept that title for a month. Because a completely broke company decided we are so back with their 32-bit Panther. Why did the astronauts even go to the moon? Mars is right there. Let's ditch this cat and switch to a cat 64. Keeping up with the NASA theme, you need to have worked there to understand the controller. What were they thinking? It doesn't say that. I was forced to do it. This is not 64-bit, so how did they reach 64 bits before anyone else? Well, they used Teriology and concluded that it was 64 bits. It would have been a great console if these greedy developers didn't cancel every single game they were gonna release for it. And that's a wrap for Atari. Sega is coming out swinging. Cool new console with scrumptious 3D sound. Drop it in Japan and boom, smash hit. 1 year till America. Problem? There's a new challenger. Our console is already doing well. But let's panic. Hey, Sega of America, let's move up the US console launch date to now. That's a terrible idea. Wow, I hired you because of your knowledge. I don't even speak English. I should trust you. Sega is announcing the Saturn's release date in the States yesterday. For $3.99. The stores are checking outside the door and Sonic has left Sega Saturn boxes and the 6 available games. It's time for their competitors conference. They walk up and say $2.99. The PlayStation will be cheaper, stronger and have more games. Apparently this thing was not good. While Sony was making their hardware in a secret lab located on Mount Fuji, Sega went down to the electronics market and put in parts that looked good. Now the Saturn did have an F-ton of games, over 1,000. How many in English? I already said, 6. Was this because the new leadership didn't think American audiences would like Japanese games? No, it was because Peak Video Game had been dropped on the console and they were worried more games would hurt its prestige. In the 1940s, 2 ex-Japanese military researchers built a rice cooker. This would lead to Madame Web. And PlayStation. Sony had made a stereo chip for the SNES. They reached out about making a CD player. Nintendo even let Sony announce their partnership. Then, the next day, Nintendo announced that they had partnered with the Dutch Christians. This dishonorable display caused executives at Sony to never want to talk about video games again. But one man was like, we should go in there and show that Edo can beat up Kyoto any day of the week. Their secret weapon? That CD player. A Nintendo cartridge is expensive to make, but a CD can be pirated like nobody's business. But they had no gaming experience, no developer, and thus no games. Fine, we'll take anything. Give me an aside. We have a luchador, maybe he's a leopard. Welcome. Bonjour, we have a Ray and the man, and we are trying to make it open world. Busy work. Welcome. I've written a horror game in English. I don't speak English. Welcome. Branded the console for adults and sold it. It was a smash hit. Then they started publishing some absolute bangers. You could make anything on the PlayStation. Like Square, they thought the N64 was dumb and weak. They thought the N64 with the peripheral was dumb and weak. So they dropped this blockbuster on PlayStation. Truly, it was the first global mainstream console, as it sold over 100 million. I feel like there's a game company missing here. Coleco? Is that a 3D monkey? Did you guys do this? Yes? Make a console. Okay? Should we add a CD player? Sure, why not? Could lead to more piracy and Nintendo not controlling production. One more word, Gaijin. Nintendo was late, but they announced the Ultra 64 with a new innovative controller. What kind of spider homunculus is this? What monstrosities are working at Nintendo? Earthbound director came up with the name Nintendo 64 because he didn't like a translated word in the title. It would drop in late June 96 with 2 games. Uh-oh. Now Mario 64, good video game. Still didn't go great. Saturn and PlayStation got this place. Well, we did one launch, what about second launch? With 3 games. One even has USA in the title. They're gonna love it, and they did. Look at this little yankling. Had to ship stock from Japan to the US. The truth is though, it was expensive to develop games for the N64. But they had a rare advantage. Had this video been made in 2015, there would be sad music playing here, but now it's more, I guess they have their fans, good for them. Love me some Conquer though. When it comes to first party though, holy moly! Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Stadium, Pokemon Stadium 2, Hey You Pikachu. The N64 wasn't a flop, but it wasn't a smash hit either. Ocarina of Time, good video game. Now before we enter the 2000s, we should probably mention PC gaming in the 90s. Myst bad, Counter-Strike bad, Unreal Tournament leads to Epic Game Store. I gotta buy the Pentium 7005 GHz so I can click on my character and walk there. You can't walk with yourself. Oh no button for jumping. I'm on my PC. I gotta use my keyboard. How do I jump? I press the Alt Gr, the paper button and scroll. How are PC gamers even real? Sega is back. The Saturn has made them stronger. Trial by fire. It's here. The Dreamcast. It's cheaper. It has an actual Sonic game. And for the first time ever, internet. 99 internet. We got Death Star. It was a smash hit. Look at Soul Calibur's graphics. Sega Dreamcast. It's thinking. Hello? This is the German tech card. Why are you thinking? Gute Frage. Third-party developers didn't like it. They released the most expensive game of all time about a guy who was once Chinese. Not enough consoles for it to be profitable. Cheaper than hyenas though. And finally, another console was coming out. Executives were like, yeah, we out. According to them. But here's the truth. Dreamcast actually sold 50 sigillion stations. But while it was on the market, Linkin Park released Crawling. They took that and turned it into a main character. Realizing he was too edgy to contain, Sega had to go wide. What was the console that destroyed it? The goddamn PlayStation 2. The history of the PlayStation 2. Well, that was a success. Let's do it again. It's the best-selling console of all time. Had a DVD player so kids could convince their parents to buy one like it was super easy. It has like 1 billion games. And iToy, pick a PS2 year, look at the games. There's gonna be at least 3 good PS2 games there. It's so iconic, when there's bad CGI in a movie, people say it looks like a PS2 cutscene. One franchise was GTA. Scotsmen making fun of America got them to become another famous Scotsman. 1, because it was good, 2, because it was controversial. My dad demanded I uninstall San Andreas because you got points for running over grandmas. What else? But PS2, remember Metal Gear 3? Remember Budokai Tenkaichi 3? Remember several new franchises every year? Now there is a console you will not remember. That, for most of you, will be unknown. In the ancient lands of Nippon, the Nintendo 64 drove men of executive to sorrow. The garrulousness behavior kept on until midnight. When a leering man of occult linkage approached, he convinced them to let him make a console. A damnable decision for the toy company. All their consoles had been grey. We shall now make it shadowy lilac. Form a cube. Like the Daragosh cube found in Lagash. Decisions were made that mocked the very essence of the Famicom doctrinaire. Mario, given a gimmick accessory. Zelda must be a toon like the creature Bugis Bonet. Luigi shall be a Ghostbuster. The Homo Gamius, colloquially gamer, rejected it in horror. GameCube aisles remained desolate. But sometimes, cameras of motion picked up shadowy grotesque creatures. These alleged GameCube owners are spoken only in the plaques of Thebes. But they are real, watchers. Nintendo tries to remove their existence by attacking every melee tournament vigorously, but they are real. Sega is dead though. Someone has to step up. Microsoft? But software is in their name! Microsoft has their own documentary. It's very exciting, lots of drama. Here's the short version. Microsoft in the living room. Yes! They called it the DirectX box. Then they shortened it to Xbox. This is the last time anything Xbox related will ever have a good name. Sony had a nice controller, so they wanted something that could beat the PlayStation. The designers misunderstood the assignment and created a Colossus that could clobber a PlayStation. 2 selling points, a hard drive and online play. What about the games? Well, they tried to sell this in Japan, so Blix the Cat, the Knights of the Old Republic, like one of the best games ever, Splinter Cell. They tried to buy a bunch of companies, all said no, except Rare, who made one game. The games weren't the reason people bought an Xbox. It was that you could get them for free. The hard drive was very easy to hack, so if your friend had an Xbox, he had like 5,000 games on that thing. To rectify this, they got impatient and were first out in a generation we call the 360 era. It's called that because when you see a game from here, you immediately turn 360 degrees and walk away from it. If you corrected me, go buy a Battle Pass, Zoomer. Released in 2005, it was amazing. This is in fact the best UI ever. And it was unapologetically American. Esports on the 360 had a Go Army commercial every 10 minutes. Gears of War, the commercial was so good. The Xbox is synonymous with online gaming. Its competitors had free online, and we still played multiplayer on the Xbox. The reason was, thanks to some genius, the console came with a mic. Originally, the Xbox 360 didn't have private party chat. Everyone had to hear you and could join in. It was the worst of humanity and the best of humanity. Let's talk about Call of Duty. I had forgotten Call of Duty when I had finished the script, so I'm adding it now in the recording. We have talked about Call of Duty, roulette wheel quality. Man, I love the 360 and there is nothing wrong with it. Fug! The Red Ring of Death could have been fixed in pre-production, but someone decided Jesus was born on 25th of December. That's gonna cost me $50. Still, the Xbox was winning, except they weren't. Another console was dominating and they got jealous, so they switched focus to Project Natal with the most fake trailer ever. The problem was this was a success, and this would screw over Xbox for the next 15 years. Sup bitches. Sup bitches. It's Kilian Warden here. I'm talking about that PS triple. The announcement for the PS3 is legendary. The PS3 will be the strongest console ever and will have a Blu-ray player. Remember Blu-ray? So they showed this game with famous battles that took place in Giant Enemy Crab. There was also the most famous first fake trailer ever, Killzone 2. Eventually they announced the price. $599, the most expensive console Sony had ever made. They released it and no one bought it. Weird commercials didn't help. Eventually they lowered the price and switched to the super successful Dear PlayStation campaign. None of that matters though. What about the games? What were the games like for PS3? So, we've finally made it. I for one am happy to be here. I am also happy you are here. I hope you have enjoyed the video so far and would be very thankful if you could leave a like. I must say, saying these words have been a dream of mine for a long time, and it fills me with joy that you are here to share this moment with me. And I'd like to thank Sony, I'd like to thank Xbox, Naughty Dog, Insomniac. So here we go. What games did the PlayStation 3 have? The PlayStation has no games! In Kyoto, the mood was melancholy. They had to go back. What made the NES? No, further. What made Pong successful? It destroyed TVs. Boys, we are doing this. You'd swing a controller around. People loved this gimmick. People played Wii Sports at a friend's house and it became a must-have console. The motion control craze. How did it work? It didn't. Next question. What about the games? I like Galaxy 1 more than 2. Other game, Wii Sports, Sports 2, Sport Harder, Wii Play, Wii Fit, Wii Fit 2, the fitting. Also Ubisoft survived on this machine, you poor baby. It was a smash hit. And the Nintendogs were double dipping with Nintendogs. The DS was also a smash hit. It prints money, unlike the PS Vita. Yeah, play Persona 4 Golden, it adds, I don't know, like anime stuff. I don't really touch weeb shit, but loser console. Nintendo won, though. They had all these casual gamers and the writing was on the wall. They were moving to mobile gaming. I have nothing to add here. I've never played a mobile game. Angry Birds, maybe. I like the music. They talked loudly about how mobile gaming was the future, and that discussion is kinda dead now, since the competition is so ruthless over there. One company really pushed mobile is the future. PC gaming in the 2000s. In the early 90s, a company called Silicon and Synapse was founded. Wait! Silicon, the material used in breast implants. Oh, they're Blizzard now. StarCraft, Diablo, Warcraft, and finally World of Warcraft. It was the most successful game in the world. Seeing their success, some broke company managed to get in there, and they became Activision Blizzard. But they weren't done yet, because compares to you. See, I got to do the sad music. And finally Overwatch. Then everything happened all at once. Made 2 games in the last 8 years. Diablo 4 and Warcraft Rumble. Which is more than the company that made Half-Life 1, then Half-Life 2, and with that changed everything. Because to play this must-have game on PC, you had to install something called Steam. People hated that. Now it's patriotism to use this buggy mess. But the most successful game of all time is not on there. And I have a recording from the pitch of that game.
Sven, I sure love being a Stockholm developer. I have an idea. You know that Danish Lego? We should take it, and then we should engineer green creatures to walk up to people and explode. I like it, but what do we call this TV game?
Gen 8. Nintendo, kings of the world. Here's the future. Wii U. We who were watching were in awe. From confusion, a tablet for your Wii? Nintendo had to confirm after the announcement that they had just announced a new console. We are off to a good start. A big fat controller, a gimmick developers don't want to use, meh graphics, and the average Wii U player simply had too much class. The Wii U owner is extremely smart, and he knows what he likes. He's comfortable playing any game. He contemplates the mistakes made by the Inklings and the Octarians. He understands and respects the complexity of a well-crafted Mario Maker level. The Wii U owner is the rarest gamer. At least they had the 3DS, I know exactly what was added in Persona 4 Golden. The last years of the 360 had sucked. Love Kinectimals as much as the next guy, but come on. It was time for a new console. May 21, 2013 would go down in history as the worst gaming press conference of all time. They announced the Xbox One. First of all, the name. Did no one say anything? TV, sport. The people who play sport games aren't gonna watch a press conference. I don't watch press conferences about yellow onions, I just buy them. It was also a TV remote, a function that will be turned off here. Neat. A feature that will be on is that it's always online. Neat. Oh, this was a different time before everyone owned an Alexa. Not everyone owns an Alexa, and people still aren't cool with an always online camera in their living room. Then there's the whole you don't own your games, but that's another thing. Finally, the price.
$199 in the US.
It's weaker, expensiver, with functions that do not work here. But what about the games? There's rare replay, and that's it. The CEO of Xbox just bailed. He wasn't even fired, he just walked out the door. Same E3 next door, Sony does it again, they did it again. And then they salted the wounds. What to say about the PS4? It's pretty good, good console, plays games, decent price. You know who helped design the controller? Bungie. Let's go to PC and talk about live service games. It's the early 2010s. A new game becomes the most popular in the world. It's called League of Legends. The aforementioned Bungie creates Destiny. These two are considered the first modern live service games, different from the old DLC or subscription model. So why are they considered modern live service games? They're both garbage. Games had to be good to constantly make money over a long period of time, but not anymore. Thanks to modern technology, people without taste could spend fortunes on horse manure. This started a gold rush for the next big live service game. Companies decided to go all in on only that, and some succeeded, others mega hits such as PUBG and of course Fortnite, which created a brand new genre I like to call boardroom punk. Games that dared to feel like they were made in a boardroom but probably weren't. But you know what's superior to live service? Re-releasing the same game 200 times. Also, every publisher had the brilliant idea of starting their own publishing platform. Publish a game and then don't put it in front of hundreds of millions of people. What could possibly go wrong? Now, poor Nintendo. Last time things were this bad, they suddenly dominated and kicked everyone's butt. Oh boy, let's do that! They took everything right with the Wii U and announced the Nintendo Switch. A new Zelda game. A new real Mario game. This is filler, Nintendo. Switch outsold the Wii U in 10 months. I play it on airplanes. It might become the best-selling console of all time, but they're gonna reveal the next Nintendo console any day now. But the saddest thing is, this console meant the death of the PlayStation Vita. After a solid 40-year run, I respect it. I heard it's a pretty good handheld. I'm proud of you, man. The Xbox Series X. I haven't covered random consoles like the Swedish Gizmodo, so why start now? But Game Pass. Microsoft went from a small nobody to a video game mega corporation. So far, they've made Redfall, shut down, Hi-Fi Rush, shut down, and Starfield. They're not gonna shut down Bethesda, scared of Todd going John Wick. Finally, the PlayStation 5. Man, the graphic upgrades between PS4 and PS5, you can really see it after you've paid for one. Controller's pretty cool. When they launched, the world's supply chains got attacked by a kaiju. Yes, 2020 was awesome actually. Wasn't until 2023 people could actually get a hold of one. But at that point they had built a massive games library, right? Well, we're finally here. I want to thank 2 games. It has 2 games. It had 3 games. At some point, Jim Ryan decided PlayStation was one of those all-in on live services. Good idea. I pay premium for your console so I can play cash grabs. So they bought Bungie, a Potemkin developer, 12 live service games by 2025. Now it's 6. They made Helldivers, except they didn't. They published Helldivers 2. Smash hit. But they had their own game in the pipeline. Their great new IP. Showed it off in front of millions. Everyone said, wow. Dead on arrival. Next. Biggest flop in the history of video games. Toxic positivity is the gaming buzzword of the year. There is a theory that Concord would carry the PlayStation 5 Pro announcement. I like this theory, so I've decided it's true. Disk drive not included. I have never bought a digital game on PlayStation. The prices are so extremely different. They did sell out in China because of Wukong. Not the first Chinese game or the first game based on Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but it is the first Chinese game programmed with the sturdiness of Mount Tai. And this segues into us talking about the future of games. Where are we headed? Digital ownership? AAA bubble? How graphical stagnation will affect premium gaming in the second and third world? Well, let's discuss it. Or we can talk about something else. Because I've played many games while making this video, and I've concluded that there are 3 that are so objectively much better than all the other ones, it's not even fair. That's an unbiased opinion, by the way. I went back, I thought it was nostalgia, maybe they weren't as good as I remember, and I was like, no, they're way better than I remember. My nostalgia had confused me. I remember them being of worse quality, but they were of better quality. Oh my god, they're so good! Like, what even is the point of discussing the future of video games? Have you seen these? These have already been made. What's even the point? And that's the Kilian Experience. Did you count the number of times I said smash hit? Good. The next video will not take as long. Something simple, easy. Whoop whoop.